Hey, welcome to the Live Like It's True podcast, where we look at some of the most interesting and surprising stories of the Bible. Stories that collectively all tell the true story about God. I'm your host, Shannon Popkin, inviting you to open your Bible with me, to drink in this true story and to live like it's true. Well, Sandra Currie, welcome back to Live Like It's True for part 2 of your story.
Thank you for having me back.
We're so glad to have you. Sandra's going to tell us more about her story of infidelity and redemption, reconciliation. You're going to want to go back and listen to part 1 because we talked about Sandra's experience of feeling betrayal in her marriage. We talked about Jesus and Judas and how Judas also betrayed with a kiss, and how we talked about shame, how Sandra felt undue shame and couldn't look her husband in the eye for many months. And how we compared that to Jesus. Should Jesus have felt any shame by being betrayed by Judas? And the answer is no. Jesus did nothing wrong. He was completely righteous. But we also talked about the difference between judging and exercising good judgment. So there's lots of good stuff, but I want to continue. Sandra, because, where we left off, it's all been fully disclosed. You sent James away, and for months then you can't look him in the eye. And you said last time when we were talking that, there was this, I don't trust you. You are almost like you are beneath me, like righteous anger, but also mingled with some contempt. Would you say contempt is a good word?
I think contempt is a good word. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And here's what I know about judgy people like me. I struggle so much with judging, and I can't communicate my judgy disgust towards somebody else without elevating myself in that moment. Judgment is always targeted downward. Judgment is always there's always a component where I'm lifting myself up in righteous indignation, in self-exaltation, in, there's always just a part of it where you are that and I am not. I never have, I never would, I never could. And we explored some of these themes in Comparison Girl, that study that you were in, right? It's like comparing down. We always think of comparison as like feeling inadequate and insecure, but there's this other kind of comparing that compares down, and it's mingled together with judgment, contempt. And so when I use that word contempt, here's what I mean. Contempt in the Bible, it indicates I have weighed and measured this person and made a final judgment about them. They are worthless. They are nothing. They are despicable in my eyes. And that right there is just not our place, right? It's just not our place. Jesus is the judge of all, and he alone holds the final gavel. And when we slide up on his bench prematurely and take that gavel in our hands, I in my book, I've written this allegory that kind of weaves through the book. And I talk about people trying to pound gavels, but they're silent. We can't hear them. We don't have the right. We don't have the place to pound any final gavel. That belongs to Jesus alone. And so tell us about that discovery in your heart. Was there ever a point where you realized that you had become sinful in your judgment of James?
So at the time, no, absolutely not, because his sin was so big and so great and so hurtful that I was more in that place of, what did I do to deserve this? Am I not pretty enough? Am I not skinny enough? Am I not, you could go on and on and on and on, right? And it wasn't until later through recovery that I had to take a pause and go, okay, his affair was not my fault, but where was I not wifing? Is that a word? Wifing? Where was I not being a good wife? Again, not my fault that he had an affair.
Right.
But I needed to say, where can I make changes And then I had to unpack all of that and deal with that as well. And that is what also saved our marriage. He did it, I did it, and then we did it together. So I had to
Mhm.
start judging myself, my actions, my past behavior, where I needed to just be, where I had hurt him and where I wasn't meeting his needs. Again, I want to stress, because I wasn't meeting his needs doesn't mean that it justified an affair. So I can't say that more.
It kind of reminds me of where like girls are shamed because they cause men to lust. Like,
Yeah.
no, you don't take
No.
on that shame on yourself. Like you don't cause anybody to lust, but yes, please be modest. You know,
Yeah.
like it's both and. It's like, no, you can't take on that responsibility. He's responsible for his mind, but yes, you are responsible for the way you dress. And please don't walk to church in a bikini. You know, like it's just not helpful, right? And so I think, yeah, that's good and right. And what I hear you saying is, you know, so many times in these stories of judgment in the Bible, people being judgmental toward one another, there's this contempt, there's this disgust, like, I am completely separate from you. In fact, when Simon is looking at the sinful woman who's kissing Jesus's feet, he calls her that sort. He says, like, this prophet must not know, he must not be a prophet because he doesn't know who and what sort of woman this is. And so the implication is she's a different sort than me. Like, we are as separate as you could possibly be. I would never, I have never. And you know, there's this holy contempt. But what I hear you saying, Sandra, is exactly the opposite of that. You're saying, well, I'm not Jesus. I am not completely holy and righteous. And I have contributed to the brokenness in our relationship. Where Jesus can look at Judas and say he is completely 100% righteous. There is absolutely no reason to self-reflect. Jesus did everything right for Judas. And yet, okay, look at this with me. Even though Judas had a front row seat to glory, he had a front row seat to truth, he had a front row seat to an intimate relationship with the most amazing. I mean, Jesus is like the easiest person to ever get along with. He is the kindest, the most fun friend, the most intelligent friend, I mean, nobody tops Jesus. People flocked to him. They loved him. And Judas got in on that. He got in on like the intimate one of the 12, like the Gospels repeatedly refer to him. All four Gospels, they refer to him as Judas, one of the 12. And it's not like we're going to forget he was one of the 12. I think what they're saying is like this jaw dropping, like, I can't believe one of the 12 would betray him. And yet, look at how Jesus responds, not just to Judas, but all of the people who are treating him with such wrong contempt, like such, I mean, they turn on him. Like a week ago, they were yelling, Hosanna. And now they're yelling, crucify him. And they're spitting at him and they are hitting him in the face and they are mocking and saying, which one hit you, Messiah? And they are belittling him. And they are stripping him of all of his human dignity, let alone his deity dignity. This is the most valuable being in the universe, and they completely strip him of dignity. They strip him physically. They strip him with their words and with their actions. They're spitting in his face. And so how does Jesus respond when that cross is like put in place, when Jesus hangs on that cross? Here's how he responds. With his arms wide open, he says, Father, be merciful on them. They don't know what they're doing. Jesus responds to utter sinfulness with mercy. And I mean, Sandra, I look at that and I think I just can't. I can't. If I was in your shoes, I'd be like, I can't. I have got none of that in me. And that's exactly right. We can't. That's why he did. You know, Jesus not only died in our place, he lived in our place. He chose rightly in every way that we have failed. Uh-huh. And so in those moments where you couldn't look at James with an ounce of mercy, you couldn't even look at him. You were both ashamed and fearful and undone and grieving, but you were also like had this disgust, this judgy disgust for him. Jesus never did that. Never. Like to the bitter end, he did not succumb to this contemptuous disgust, even though he is so far above us in every way. And he could say, I never have, I never would, I never could, to all of us, to all of those people gathered at his cross, sneering at him. He could have said that because he hadn't ever done anything like this. But instead, he chose mercy. That's why he's allowing himself to die on the cross. And so in those moments that you couldn't, Jesus did. He had mercy for James when you couldn't have mercy for James. He had an open heart of compassion and empathy for James, even when you couldn't. And I think that in his strength alone, were you able to look at yourself and say, all right, I have contributed some to the brokenness. Lord Jesus, would you also deal with me? And what you just said too, Sandra, I think is the key component of reconciliation. The fact that you too were willing to utterly humble yourself and say, I've contributed. Like I've gone through some reconciliation with people too. And that is the hardest thing when you are the one who feels wronged. To say, well, I too. You know, it's exactly the opposite of what Simon was saying, calling her that sort and seeing, it's like, you're putting yourself, I'm the same sort. I too have failed in this marriage. And how can I humble myself? What can I, and I mean, there is nothing more powerful than humility and I know I'm going on and on about this, but with Jesus on that cross, with Jesus dying there on that cross, this is the most extravagant display of humility the world has ever known. Because he did nothing wrong. He did nothing wrong. Any one of us, if we're on that cross, we deserve to die for our sin. That's Jesus, or God said from the beginning, you eat of this fruit, you sin, you suffer. You sin, you suffer. It's an immediate cause and effect consequence. And the consequence for sin is death. He told Adam and Eve that before they ate of the fruit. And so for any of us, we deserve death. Jesus didn't. And so he's displaying humility, and he living in you gives you that supernatural power to be humble, even in a situation where you've been desperately wronged. So talk to us about that humility. How did God produce that in you? And what did it do for your marriage?
Serious faith deserves serious conversation. At Round the Table, we produce thoughtful, gospel-centered content grounded in the truth of God's Word. Pull up a chair and join us where truth and life meet. Visit roundthetable.co.
Well, so James and I were apart for 3 weeks, and he would come and see the kids because I was teaching Zumba in person again. So he'd come and see the kids. We sort of crossed paths. It started in James, and I had never seen him be humble. I had never seen him be I'd never seen the man cry like this. But again, being apart for 3 weeks, we had conversed a little bit, but it started with James, and he had sent me a text message, and he asked me. Now, we had actually had a few conversations with our pastor, which is sort of God weaved all that together as well. But so the fact that he was even having this conversation with our pastor, I thought was huge as well. But he had sent me a text and he said, can I pray for you? Can I pray for us? I had never prayed with this man ever. And
was he a believer before you got married?
We were going to church. I was very actively involved in church, more than he was, but we would go to church, and I think for the longest time he was going through the motions, but not really. So, and a lot of that had come out later, but when he had sent me that text message, I thought, who is this man? What? Okay.
You're seeing something different.
And so absolutely, I said yes. And so when he sent me this text prayer, my heart started to soften a little bit. And so I texted him a prayer back. And he had said he was surprised that I texted him back a prayer because, again, I was so angry. And so that's
Mhm.
really honestly how I started to notice some changes in him.
Can I interject? I think that is really key right there, Sandra, because I've seen some women who, when their husbands do, they are broken and they are apologetic and they're wanting to change. The wife is like, nope, you had your chance. And so the fact that you opened the door, you were seeing, it's like all the things you always dreamed of were happening. And this is God doing this work in him. And I mean, God never would have ordained an affair, but he does allow things that crush us, and that are he works all things together for good, and we don't understand. We can't get a peek behind that curtain. But this was God doing a great work in James, humbling him. You'd never seen him humble before. I mean, that is an amazing work of Jesus. We can't be humble apart from his work in us. Like that is just, we cannot manufacture humility. We are born proud. We are just born with like self-independence and self-sufficiency and like, I can do this and I am, selfishness,
And
all
that's
of
all.
that.
Being
We're born
proud is also on top of being judgmental.
It's so true. I think it's so key that you responded to his humility with humility yourself. For you to receive that prayer by text and for you to even look at that and say, wow, this is a good thing. I know women who would say, oh, no, 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 you're not going to use that on me. Like hold it over their husband and respond with contempt, even when he's changing. And so reconciliation requires a lot of humility on the part of the person being asked to forgive. So much humility. And I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you that you responded with that text. So I just had to say that.
Yeah. Well, he had also shared more very intimate details of the affair in front of our pastor, which also was another green flag for me as well. And
yeah, that's
so,
humility, right?
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
disclosing. So what we're looking for in these situations, and I think people listening are trying to sort out, if you're in a situation and you found this podcast and you're like, how do I know? Humility. That is just the number one thing. Is he broken? Is he humble? Does he actually confess the sin? In the story of Judas, when Judas betrayed Jesus, it says that the word used for his response when he went to the chief priests and said, here, take this money back. He was grieved, but not in a broken sorrow over his sin. He was grieved over the consequences. And there is a huge difference.
There is a huge difference. Yeah.
Yep. And Judas hung himself. That was not a display of humility. It was just a display of, this is what idolatry does. He had so elevated money. It was his idol. James so elevated lust. It was his idol. We have so elevated anything that we give power over us. And like we said last time, our idols always hurt us. Your idols will hurt you. They will make you hurt you. And that's what happened to Judas. That's what happened to James. But what we see in James is something supernatural, a true humility. You see humility in disclosing, in change of, a repentance always involves change, a willingness, a humility of like, I'm going to try something new. I mean, that's hard to say, can I pray for you when you've never done that before? It's intimidating, especially as a husband who knows he has just committed an affair, and so to try to lead his wife spiritually, like that's a huge step right now. And if you had shut him down in that moment, I think the story could have gone differently. And so proud of you. And so self-disclosing in the moment. Continue.
Oh, thank you, Shannon. Okay. So there was 3 weeks of this. Well, I wouldn't say 3 weeks we were apart. So 3 weeks we were separated, and we have gone on an annual camping trip for, I don't even know how long. It's always over my birthday. It's been, I don't even know, at that time it was like 8 years or whatever. And the kids had started asking me, are we still going? Are we still going? And I just thought, I don't want to give up this trip either. I haven't spent any time with him. What are we going to do? And so,
can you give us the timeline again? Like, I remember you talking about the last camping trip. Where are we in the timeline?
Okay. So that camping trip was So I found out on July 12th of 2020. So that was a Sunday. So we were camping that weekend. So that Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So now 3 weeks later, we're going on another camping trip in August. So
Okay.
we always go over my birthday, which is August 11th.
Okay.
Send
So it's
gifts
just
to, no.
really, really fresh. And they're wondering, are we going on this next camping trip? I get it now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And they love this trip. We all love this trip. So I wasn't going to take that trip away from them. And so I told James, I said, you can sleep on the couch. Our camper wasn't huge, but we did have a couch. And so then I was going to have my son sleep in the bed with me. And we have a bigger camper now. Praise Jesus, 4 kids, bigger camper. But at the time they were still somewhat little. So we got there, and we had done all the things. We had packed the camper. And again, during this 3 weeks, we were sort of talking to each other. So now we're up camping, and we get there, and I had barely even let him touch me even at this point. And so I just remember, as we were trying to figure out where everyone was going to sleep, I just remember looking at him going, I said to him, I want to sleep with my husband, not sexually, but I want to sleep in the same bed with my husband. And so Andrew then went back and slept on the couch, and we actually, that was one of the first times we had actually really embraced. And so we ended up actually staying up till 2-3 o'clock in the morning, having deeper conversations. And on that trip, we actually met with a mentor couple. Our church had coordinated a mentor couple that had been through an affair, that lived in the general area. I mean, talk about a God wink right there. Like, okay, you're going to be here. I have a person here that's also you can talk to. And so we spent a day with them, and James actually asked her a lot of questions, because why is Sandra asking me so many questions? I feel like if I tell her the truth, it's going to hurt her even more. And because I wanted to know everything, I wanted to know everything. He didn't understand why I wanted to know everything. So that afternoon with that couple was also a huge learning opportunity for the both of us to just be mentored and poured into by another couple that had been through it.
Yeah. What did she say? What was her response?
Tell her everything.
Why?
That so she said to him, tell her everything that she's asking, because if it comes out later, it's going to hurt more. Because if she asks and you lie, and then she looked at me and she said, Sandra, if you're going to ask the question, be prepared to be hurt. Do you want to know enough to be hurt? And so she talked to both of us, and that was key, because I still, it didn't matter. I still wanted to know everything, and I still asked, but that advice stuck in me, because yes, I'm going to ask, I'm going to get hurt, but he's going to tell me the truth.
Well, and I think if we can offer that to our spouse, a place to be completely naked, right?
Yeah.
Completely lay it out bare, what we have done. We give them an opportunity to repent, right? Really, and to drag that ugly sin into the middle of our bedroom. I mean, I just picture you guys in that camper. You're in the same bed and you're talking, and
a lot of crying.
So much crying. But that is the kind of humility reconciliation requires. It's just a breaking down. And when I don't know that every couple can handle that. My husband and I have this agreement, and like I said, not everyone can handle this, but we have this agreement that when we are tempted by someone else, that, maybe we have a thought about someone, like just, we really enjoy the company of a friend or coworker. We disclose that to each other. And that, I mean, just immediately, because when I have said this before, I ran into an old boyfriend. We had little kids at the time, and I just it was like one of those first love situations where my heart was just like
Yeah.
so warm to him, and like seeing him again was like, oh my goodness, I couldn't stop
Triggered something.
thinking
Yeah.
about it. Yeah. And I tried talking to a friend about it, and I just couldn't stop thinking about him, and I didn't want to think about him, and I didn't want those feelings. And so when I disclosed that to my husband, I just said, hey, I ran into him, and I don't want to think about him, but I just want to tell you, it was gone. It was like,
Yep.
I don't want to think
Yep.
about him. I have you. I've committed myself to you. And it was just like this beautiful, I don't know that I had even necessarily sinned, because I wouldn't call it lust. It was just like these butterflies, that came back, and I just, had these memories of young love, right? I don't know if it was love, but it was definitely young butterflies. And so, but being that safe place to one another. And now I know that's completely different with a spouse who has betrayed you to such depth, but you did that for your husband. You said, I want to know the truth. You gave him a place to answer. He got this great advice. He disclosed it all. And here you were, not only opening your heart to him, but opening up to him physically. Like even like some women could not be in the same room with a man who had, like we just, and a lot of that is just the superiority. It's like this condescending disgust, like, oh no, you are not coming anywhere near me. We have to express good judgment, but we can so easily, without realizing it, step over into this condescending disgust toward this other sinner. And what I see you doing is so humble, opening yourself, opening your bed to him in that camper. These are the seeds for reconciliation. So continue. Tell us more about the camping trip.
Well, you kind of make it sound like it was really easy. So I just want to make
No.
sure that
Yeah.
everybody knows that it was not easy. But again, like you said, I had to be open and willing, but I was still so angry. But listening, opening my heart a little bit more and more. And we did a big dance for a long time, 2 steps forward, 5 steps back. We really did. But and I call this um his eyes changed moment. And as I started to then look at him, and I could see his eyes were changing, and that was so key to me, to be able to open my heart up slowly, to be able to let him back in, because I just didn't see the evil anymore in his eyes. I was seeing a man that I had never seen before. I was seeing the man that I originally fell in love with so long ago, and he was unraveling, which I'm going, yes, he's unraveling, but he was unraveling in a good way. And I was noticing in his eyes Jesus coming in and the enemy leaving. And it's so hard to explain. I was explaining this to a woman the other day that I'm working with, and she said, I get it. I understand. And she's waiting for that moment for her husband's eyes to change, but she can see it. And so, and it really was a moment where I finally was able to look at him and see this very predominant change. And that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to stay. When I say he was begging me, he was literally at one point on his hands and knees begging me in a public space. That's a whole nother story, to stay. And so that's when I knew, we're going to figure this out and we're going to stay. And at one point, he even asked me, he's like, you're only staying with me because of the kids. And when I said to him, yes, he was a little shocked by that. But I was saying, yes, I'm staying with you for the kids, but I'm not staying with you just for the kids. They're a big part of it. They are a piece to consider. And as he started to realize, he didn't want me to just stay because of the kids. And so when I said yes, I think I surprised him. But there's so many pieces to the puzzle as to why to stay, that the kids are definitely a big part of it, but not the only part.
Yeah. Tell me about that moment when his eyes changed. What were you talking about? Where were you? Can you paint that scene for us?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I really
Okay.
don't know.
You just gradually, okay.
I do wonder if I journaled about it. So, and I did, I wrote, I poured my heart out into my journal and prayed. And so, and I do know I journaled about it, but it was It probably wasn't an instant moment, but I think as here's the thing. When he was saying some of these things to our pastor, we were in masks. Okay.
Oh,
So the only thing I saw was his
with his
eyes.
eyes.
And
Yeah.
so it was a slower process of just watching him unravel and watching his eyes change
Mm-hmm.
that I started to notice. And then I noticed again. And then I noticed again. But because we were behind masks in that time so many times, not when we were camping, because that's why we could go camping, was because we were all in our individual little camping areas, but I do remember in that moment of him saying that to our pastor, and I still wasn't really looking at him. I still had a hard time looking at him, but as I started to look at him, I started to notice the differences.
You said earlier that God was also working in your heart and ways that you hadn't been the wife that you wanted to be. Can you share some of the changes you made on your side of the marriage?
Leadership comes with a lot of pressure, especially in ministry. On Regarding Leadership, we go beyond the expectations, behind the mask, and beneath the surface to have honest conversations about what leadership really requires. Listen today wherever you get podcasts.
So we started going to Celebrate Recovery. And if you are unfamiliar what Celebrate Recovery is, if any of your listeners, it is a 12-step recovery program for all of the things that we as humans, if you are breathing, you qualify to go to Celebrate Recovery. So it's a lot of times people think it was just for alcoholics. 1 in 4 people are there for alcoholism, and then everybody else is there for everything else. And so he started to go, which was another green flag for me. Like, he's
Yeah.
going, he's realizing the things that he needed, that why he fell into this pit in the first place. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started going together, and that's when I started to, they like to say, unpeel the onion, right? So unpeel my own onion and started to actually talk to other women who, again, this is a very humble place. You go to a place
Mm-hmm.
where everybody's there for recovery, whether it's codependency or sexual integrity issues or drugs and alcohol or anxiety and depression and eating disorder. I mean, everything that falls in a bucket you can find at Celebrate Recovery. And I didn't first start going to unpack myself. I started to go because I knew that I needed to find some sort of healing from this, right? Because I knew I wanted to stay, but how do I heal from betrayal? And so when I got into I take that back, because it took me a year to get into a step study. And that's where you just kind of do a deeper dive. But that first year of recovery, we really started to have a lot of conversations, and we did have a counselor, but that's not really where a lot of our recovery took place. But the changes that I started to have to make were, how much was I actually paying attention to James? How much was I mothering? I mean, I had 4 children. I had 4 children in 6 years, right? I wasn't meeting his love language. I was not seeing him. I was not his cheerleader. And he was very, very career orientated, which is also something that he really had to do a 180 about and realize, like, the Lord's going to always take care of us financially. But he was talk about money, right? But so when he started to pull back on some of those things, I started to realize, okay, well, you are pouring into your career, but yet I'm not at your job every day. I don't see those things that you're doing, but you wanted me to see those things even though I couldn't see him. So I wasn't cheering him on. I wasn't his encourager. I wasn't lifting him up. I wasn't all of those things. And I will say, I do better at it, but I think it is a hard thing to do, right? Especially when you're not necessarily in their career world.
Yeah.
But I then became a little bit more in tune of those things. So
Yeah. I would say that's one of the secret sauces of our marriage. I remember being at my husband was at a work. We got together with some other couples that he worked with, and the men, and the wives all wanted to go in this other room and talk just among themselves. And I was like, I really want to be in with the men, because like these are the guys I hear about all the time.
Yeah.
I want to get to know them. My heart was so divided, and so like I went and joined the men. I'm like, this is so weird, but I love this part of your life, and I want to be in on it. And I know you're just talking shop, but like now I can put the names with the faces, and I had invested so much in being like his wife, as you know, someone who works, and I still, you know, I try to really be invested in that, even though I don't. He's a data scientist. I have no clue what he actually does, but I love hearing about the people and about the interactions, and as much as I can follow. And so, and like just kind of walking that with him. I think also when we think about intimacy, like recognizing you are the only viable outlet for those desires, right? You're the only option he has to be a godly man. And so, man, when we're mommying everybody and even mommying him, right? That is just, that's hard. that just depletes some really vital, essential elements of the marriage. And so,
well, we as moms get pulled in a million different directions that sometimes our husband gets what's left. And I think if you can shift that into, no, God, husband, kids.
Yeah.
And I was not, that was not the order that I was in.
Well, and it's described as one flesh, like one flesh. You know, if he has a need, you like if your right hand has a need, your left hand is not going to say, not my problem, right? One flesh means you're in this together. And so, and that is not the same as with our kids, right?
Yeah.
But again, we are not saying that a wife is the cause of any infidelity. Like his sin is his sin. So catch us up then. You guys have humbled yourself. You have opened yourself to mentoring. Did he still interact with this other woman at work? How did you deal with like getting past that?
So he actually ended up, he met her at not his full-time job. So again, he was very focused on making sure, very worried about money. So he was at that time working 3 jobs.
Oh, wow.
So he gave up 2 of those jobs. Thankfully, the one job that he met her at, he was able to do on Zoom once COVID hit, but then he actually ended up quitting. So he cut off all ties from her, every possible thing that he changed his phone number. He did all of the things and that was just, again, another green flag about how serious.
Due diligence, man. Yeah, that's so important. I think like Jesus says, cut off your arm. I think quitting a job is a very viable response in a situation like this. And I know people argue, we couldn't, like, how are we going to make it? Well, how are you going to make it if your marriage doesn't? I mean, like, this is just so important. So go ahead.
Well, and now that I knew the whole truth, she had nothing over him anymore. So he was able to just cut all ties. And then we were able to just focus on ourselves, which was also huge. But now he surprised me with a big trip for our anniversary, and we hadn't even kissed, anything.
How much longer after that?
So our camping trip was in August. Our anniversary is in October. So it was about 3 months from July. Surprised me. He did amazing. He planned the whole thing, had lots of surprises, and was very gentle about trying to reconnect again. And I was not the woman that had an easy time doing it. So he was very kind and very gentle in that way. And so that was a little bit of a baby step process, but another green flag that he was all in and was amazing about it. So
that's so cool. What I hear on both parties is a compassion and empathy for one another, which are the fruits of humility. right? When we humble ourselves, it's like, I just want to contrast those. A judgy, contemptuous, disgusted person is like, I never have, I never would, I never could. Like, I am different than you. I am elevated. A humble person is like, how can I make it easier for you? How can I watch for, like, okay, you're changing. I'm open to that. I'm receptive to that. You still using good judgment, right? But okay, if God is going to do this work in you, I'm receptive to that. I'm not going to rush it. I'm not going to just assume that everything is fixed in a moment. You know, it can be a gradual process, but it's not slamming the door to reconciliation. And I'm so thankful that you guys have shown that compassion and empathy to each other. You've been, you've humbled yourself. I know. And maybe I do make it sound like it's easier than it is. Like when I think about the ways that I have judged people and God has changed my heart to them, to me, it does not feel like life at the beginning. It feels like death. It feels
Yes.
like nothing in me wants to give you an ounce of, no, you are wrong. And I am hurting and I am mad and I never have, and I never have, you know, like all of those feelings. But here are some things. Let me just offer a couple of things and see if they resonate with you, and then we'll close. So a couple of the things that have really been helpful for me is to pray in plural. And what I mean is, instead of praying for God, God to fix him and his problems, I pray in plural. And I say, God, we both are broken. God, we both have brought our brokenness into this marriage. We both have hurt each other in different ways. Would you help both of us? And so like this praying in plural, and I picture us both on our knees at the foot of the cross, knowing that we're both sinners. We both have offended a holy God, and Jesus has died in our place. So praying in plural is one of those things. There's this bearing with, like, recognizing this other person is a sinner too. And how can I show empathy? Like empathy is like, it's making space for sinners, like we can become so principled, so like righteous indignation that we don't, like, we can just shut everybody out in our principled, perfect
pride.
little pride. It's so much pride. And so empathy is like, I'm making space for their sin, for them to be a sinner that Jesus has reconciled. And then I think just that picture of Jesus on the cross in the face of everyone spitting at him, everyone mocking him praying that they would be forgiven. That does not mean that everyone will be forgiven. We aren't universalists. We don't believe that all people go to heaven. One day, you know what Jesus told the judges right before they condemned him to death? He said, one day you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of God, coming on the clouds of glory. And so what he's basically saying is, yes, one day the tables will turn and you will see me as your judge. Yes, that day will come. And that, knowing that, and that even though he is going to be the judge over these people, he still shows them mercy, hoping that he doesn't have to condemn them to death. Like, that's what mercy is. Mercy is different than grace. Mercy is not giving you the judgment that you deserve. Grace is giving you something that you haven't earned. But so mercy is like, you are wrong and you do deserve my judgment and my wrath and my, but I'm not giving that to you, And so if Jesus was this merciful, then how can we be merciful like him? We're to be, Jesus said in his sermon in Luke chapter 7, he said, be merciful like your Father is merciful in heaven. He said, don't judge. And then he said, be merciful. So like, here's what you don't do. Here's what you do. Be merciful like your Father in heaven. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me, Shannon.
You're so welcome. Friend, I hope this conversation will inspire you to study this story for yourself straight from the Bible. Check the show notes for my free Live Like It's True workbook packed with resources to help you study the narratives of the Bible. We've also got links to the other resources mentioned in this episode and a link to my website where you can search our episodes by section and book of the Bible. Live Like It's True is part of the Round the Table Network. For more gospel-centered content that nurtures connection, deepens faith, and sparks conversation, go to roundthetable.co. Thanks so much for joining me, and now it's time to go live like it's true.